ride, teach, inspire. This is the Dropping Next podcast, brought to you by the Canadian Association of Snowboard Instructors. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dropping Next podcast. I am Rob Whalen, communications guy with Cassie, and I'm here co-hosting our next episode with Executive Director Jeff Chandler. And we've got a bit of a biography type interview with a member episode planned for you here today, and I'm going to actually hand it over to Jeff to introduce our guest, Andy Martock. See, I'm going to have to edit that out.
That's good.
Andy Martock, Andy MacLean, longtime friends and colleagues in the industry. So I'll hand it over to you here, Jeff, to introduce Andy.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, when are you going to legally change your name, Andy, from Andy MacLean to Andy Martock? Everybody knows you as Andy from Martocks.
Yeah, that's so cool. To be totally locked into a little resort in rural Nova Scotia. It opens a lot of doors.
Yeah. Well, thanks for taking the time. And Andy MacLean from Martock, Nova Scotia, Cassie Hall of Fame member. Been part of the Cassie scene for many years back since the early days, and so we're just really stoked to get a chance to talk to you and get a bit of your story. I guess one of the things we were just chatting about before we started recording here was what kind of the average weekday looks like at your resort at Martock. What's going on there today?
So what's going on here today? So it's a Tuesday, and it's the day after the provincial holiday, Monday, Heritage Day. So after 3 insane weekend days, really busy days for us, we're kind of just coasting with only about 500 school kids here today, learning to ski and snowboard, and then about 110 racing snowboards today is part of a provincial school sport. Snowboard cross is part of that race or part of that competitive side of school sport, along with hockey and all the other boring sports. You've got snowboarding there as well. So we have 110 kids here racing today.
That's very cool how it's included as part of the overall kind of sport landscape, school sport landscape. That's pretty neat.
Yeah. It's been going on. I think it's got to be at least 10 or 15 years since, or at least probably pushing 15 now, since it's been included as a school sport.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I was talking about Martock. I mean, do you count the seasons you've been at Martock anymore? You've been there a long time.
Yeah.
You
know what's crazy? So I counted. So this is my 41st season working here. And it's my 53rd or 4th season sliding here, which is brutal.
How's that even possible, Andy? Are you even that old?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so that old. Yeah. I'm wearing a lot of clothing right now, so you maybe can't tell. So, yeah. So it's, 41 years working here. And they really have flown by. You always hear people say that, but they really have flown by. And it's been a trip, and it's been a lot of fun as well.
Yeah. How did you get there? did you grow up in the area? What started it off for you?
Yeah, I grew up in the area, I learned to ski here. And then I just, at that sort of teenage years after high school, took a year off to maybe work here and do a couple of other summer jobs. And then it just turned out that, it's another winter, and then we're putting in a chairlift for the first time. So you work that summer, and then 10 years have gone by, then 20, then 41, just like that. Yeah. So it was just a lot of weird little things that happened along the way that kept me here. And I would say Cassie certainly played a big role in snowboarding, in keeping me interested and engaged and providing opportunities in this industry, especially in the region that I live in.
Yeah, for sure. So what's your current role there at Martock?
So in operations, I've been operations manager for a few years. So I feel like today, I was just thinking about my day today and this weekend. So we've added tubing here. So I know Cassie's been looking at maybe certifying tubing instructors for several years, just bringing them in under the umbrella. So I have some ideas, but we just started offering tubing, so I know nothing about tubing. So I spent the last 2 days over at the tubing park becoming a tube master again, because we moved it, just so I can sleep tonight knowing that everything's working in the tubing park because tubers don't stop. They can't stop. So they're basically at the mercy. They're like the infants of snow sports because they're 100% reliant on what everyone else is doing to make them safe. So if that makes any
Yeah.
sense, I spent a day and a half in tubing. Today, I picked up garbage on the deck in the morning. I carried a bunch of stuff to the top of a race course. I put in a start gate. We have features, put up snow fence, like just a lot of those things still. And those are things that I love. I'm not complaining. So there are a lot of great emails to answer and a lot of people offering incredible feedback on what we should do to make this place better or how great it is. But in the end, it's just getting out on snow every morning and doing some of those around the mountain shores that are a great way to start the day out.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. You heard it here first, but we've been working on altering the logo for Cati, CATI. We're going to just turn the swoosh and the maple leaf into just a straight
Yeah.
line for tubing instructors.
Straight time. That's right. Yeah, it's crazy. I think there's a lot of, I don't know about instructor. Really, anyone's going to be a pretty low bar for instructor for tubing because in my experience as a tube master for over the last day and a half, it's really just directing people to where it starts and telling them to get out of the way as quickly as they can once it stops.
Clear
I
the
think
landing area.
14-year-olds are definitely going to be able to, right from the bat, will accept 14-year-old certifications. Yeah.
I think the big thing with tubing is that it's the person pushing the tube down the hill. Can you
Or
get a
spinning
good
the-
spin
yeah.
on it? Do you want to
Yeah.
go fast? Do you want to go backwards? These are considerations.
So there's pushers at other resorts. I didn't know that. That makes sense. So this could be a two-person department we might have now instead of just a one-person. So I wonder how much longer we're going to talk about tubing. I didn't see this coming at all.
I was just going to say, like, kind of transitioning back into snowboarding a little bit. I have a small or a big place in my heart for grassroots small hills, coming from a 300-foot vertical hill in Ontario. And that aspect of like everybody pitches in to make the place work is pretty cool. So I thought it would be interesting to hear you speak to like the community that exists at a small hill.
Yeah, it is. We're operating. What's interesting about a little resort, and you probably know this, Rob, and you don't, Jeff, because you're at bigger resorts, you'd have no idea of just how hard it is we have at little resorts. But little resorts, really, we're operating, so we are small, but we're operating 7 days a week, 12 hours, 9 to 9 every day, 7 days a week. So there's no sort of real reset time for a small resort. So you're kind of operating with the staff, and it's a really cool mix of people that have been here for a really long time, that they're offered that consistency and sort of that knowledge base that continues on. And then you're bringing in new people or young people that might be with you for a season or 5 seasons as they move through, say, snow school as a snowboarder, ski instructor, and maybe leave for university. So it's a really interesting sort of combination. And I think this is true of other resorts. And then there's that combinations of, our guests that are coming primarily from more urban areas. Halifax is 45 minutes away or an hour away. And then many of the employees are local people from around this small rural area. So it's a really interesting mix of people, and it's a really interesting mix. If you work here, you could be doing everything from changing a urinal puck or plunging a toilet to like teaching a high-end snowboard lesson, right? Or whatever, everything in between. So that's not a bad thing because you have what I found, and Jeff, I think we talked about this, is you really have a better sense, I think, of the holistic part of the industry. You understand it sort of from ground level and up if you come from a small resort. So maybe the scale's smaller, but all the jobs are the same. All the things are being done regardless of where you are in the world. And you have a really good sense of every level, every job, beginning to end from, first thing in the morning till close at night. And that's cool.
Yeah, one of the standout experiences for me over the last decade or so was I had a chance to do a CASI course in New Brunswick, actually at Crab Mountain, and then after that managed to make it over to Martock to drop in on your spot, and it was really cool to it sort of felt like take your friend to work day. I think it was a Sunday, and I showed up at Martock, and I kind of just tagged along behind you all day. But
I remember.
I think I found you, probably like 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and you were up on the hill setting up the Riglet Park, and
Yeah.
and then throughout the rest of the day, you weren't tucked away in an office. You were out, talking to the kids and parents and, doing laps on the hill and checking in with instructors. And then you were checking in with the cafeteria staff. And it was a really kind of a cool thing for me to see that.
Mhm.
We just did a podcast, or we did an episode around longevity in the industry. And one of the points that we had made was around, the small locations are a great way to build experience, but also build kind of like bigger industry wide kind of perspective, I think. So,
Yeah, I think it offers you a good perspective for sure. And I think, if I think back to that day, remember, I think it was Sarah Conrad, who was a snowboard Olympian, was like teaching her kid to snowboard that day in the Riglet Park. And that's one of the other things that we're really proud of. It's just, we've got 3 snowboard Olympians from this little place as well. And until 2018, we had a half pipe every year from 94, I think, until 2018 or 2019. We were building, a half pipe of some kind. So that sort of community, it's crazy when I think about it. So just having that history, and like you said, the Riglet Park and all these kids coming up. And this year we have new ownership here, and we got a park in really early this year, and just seeing the caliber of riding at this park, at this little hill, I love that. It just feels great. Yeah.
it's very cool.
You've
Do you think
mentioned,
that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
well, I was just, you've mentioned the Riglet Park a couple
Mm.
times now, and I mean that's a particular interest to me. I mean, without a Riglet Park, it would have been. Well, I spent a lot of time pulling my kids around with that Riglet reel over little features, and if I'm not mistaken, Andy, yours was the first in Canada at
Yeah, first
Martock.
in Canada. And you know what? I feel we haven't got it in yet. It's going in this weekend. We had a little, just because we've been building lots of other interesting features this year. The Riglet Park's got to go in this weekend for a Nova Scotia snowboard event. But yeah, just because one of the other things I did over the years, I was like working with Burton on like kids rental equipment for a long time, in like around 2000, 2002. And there was a great guy that was also pretty heavily involved with the AASI as well. Sean Catnaugh, you'd know him, remember him, Jeff. So he came from an instruction background. He was also working on the rental program at Burton. So he was a great connection. So just having input on that, the hard goods side of kids rental snowboards, which were horrible until then. And then just the Riglet Park was just kicking off sometime around the early 2000s, I guess. And then we just talked about it, and then got a chance to sort of say, well, could we have one? And we had one. And I mean, as you know, Burton was pretty heavily involved with supporting grassroots snowboarding back then, especially really supporting instructors, rental equipment, trying to offer continuity, which was never happening on the ski side in all of its history. That sort of connection from the rental shop, the snow school, and then the terrain that you were kind of grooming or preparing for the beginner, like actually integrating that and having open communication. Because ultimately, especially for snowboarding, we all know that the terrain that you're on and the condition of the terrain, fall line, all those things have such a huge effect on what that beginner experience or new snowboarder experience is like. So that was kind of cool. So yeah, so this year I feel like we're just doing such a good job at overall terrain, but it is this weekend. We have a Super Grom event, a Canada Snowboard Super Grom event coming up. So we'll stick the Riglet Park in along with a bank slalom, and so it'll go on this weekend. It's long overdue.
Yeah, nice. That's
Nice.
so rad.
Mm.
That kind of building progression from day one, or allowing space for progression to happen, it's so important. I was at a hill recently that will remain nameless, that the barrier to entry in the terrain park was so high. I'm like, well, how is
Yeah.
anybody going to learn to hit these features? Like, there needs to be the steps in between, and that starts from day one on the Riglet board. So that's cool that you've continued to make it a priority.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Would you say that looking back on your early years, I know the first, probably the first time we met was around the days when you were involved with the technical committee in Cassie. You were the tech committee chair for a while. And,
Yeah.
for a long while, actually. When I first got involved as a volunteer on the tech committee, you were the chairman of that committee. And what sort of influenced that work with Burton? Did it sort of come from your teaching side and your Cassie side, and how has that sort of bled over into your more professional life? I guess what would be your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I started off the first sort of full-time job that I had in the industry, and the first sort of supervisory job or input that I had in sort of affecting anything was as a rental shop manager here. So that just happened to be around the time where snowboarding was starting. So I think the first time we had a snowboard kicking around, it was actually from the Look rep, if I remember correctly. It was a Look bump stick, maybe 87 or 88. One was just here. And we were Look ski bindings at the time. So anyway, there was a snowboard, and it was a horrible thing, a horrible experience. It made no, I'm thinking back, we could all, if you've been doing it for a long time, there was nothing. You had no idea. There were no videos. There were no teachers. It just sucked so bad because back then snow conditions in the east especially were horrible. So there was no powder to fall in. So anyway, yeah, that was terrible. It was a terrible experience. I don't even know why I kept snowboarding. But you sort of knew, you saw maybe the odd video, and if you had a magazine, you saw how good it could look. So it was more of an aspirational thing. Like, it's possible. This could actually be fun and better. So then within a couple of years of that, we had our first rental inventory, or rental fleet of snowboards. And that would have been 88 or 89, maybe. I think the first ones were Burton Cruises. We had like 6 Burton Cruises here. And I remember there was a magazine ad for maybe even the first Snowboard Canada that came out. There was a Burton ad in the back, and Martock's little logo was there. And I just remember thinking, oh my, that's so cool. So,
That's cool.
yeah, so the whole rental thing was really, that's where it started, because I didn't know how to snowboard. I was a skier. But then, as you look at the equipment and realize just how terrible it is and how hard it is to use, but how fun potentially it could be. And then Steve Fairbairn was another guy that kicked around, another Hall of Famer as well. He moved to the area, moved from the UK. He was like a kind of a mover and a shaker. And, I really credit Steve to being the person that maybe really stick around in the long term to this, because Steve just felt like whatever he did, he treated professionally. So he just seemed like this was going to work. And I remember Steve, myself, and Stunny Woodworth, and a couple of other people started the Nova Scotia Snowboard Association right around then. We were running an event series right around then. But it was more, and then I remember it was the CSF Level 1 came around. Steve organized everything. A couple of guys showed up. Sam Kane, who was like one of the main, I think he might have been the Level 1 guy. Right, he put that together.
Right?
Anyway, they showed up at Martock, and suddenly we were snowboard instructors. Do you know what I mean? So then you kind of know what you're looking for. You had some technique, and then you realize this equipment's brutal for learning on. So we tried things like beveling edges and those kinds of things to try to make it maybe a little bit easier, a little less edge catchy. So it was more of that coming from a rentals point of view, and then having some instructional experience and realizing that you could maybe improve things to make that learning experience better.
Yeah.
And then things move so quickly then. You get a phone call saying, well, you did pretty well in that Level 1 course, so we're going to make you a course conductor if you're interested. So I remember they shipped us off to Lake Louise. It was Lake Louise, and guys like Rob Stevens was there, and C. Fairman, myself, a guy I'm still friends with all these years from Newfoundland, Jason O'Reilly. But there were a lot of people that were, Shred. So Allison Church was there. There were a lot of, Greg Daniels was there. So there was just all these people that took the CSF course that someone decided, I don't think a lot of us would have a shot now, because I think it was more about if you were loud and maybe funny or dynamic, maybe that was maybe the thing that got us there, because I definitely didn't deserve to be there. So that was the first sort of evaluator training, and that was CSF. And so there we all did our thing. We started delivering Level 1s. Level 2 came along, started delivering Level 2s. And then, 94? Then suddenly the switch over to Cassie happened through that whole thing with the CSIA.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dang.
Yeah, I remember those
Weird.
CSF days. Well, my level one was done under the CSF from Rob Stevens.
Right.
And so it
Wow.
was probably 92, 93. Yeah, it would have been the 92, 93 winter, I guess. And, you're talking about the equipment back in those days. I remember Rob, he was the course conductor or the evaluator, and he was on his Koflak ice climbing boots with the toe and heel bales
Same.
ground off, and just
Yeah.
exploring what was possible with, and a ski boot liner. I was just probably fresh out of Sorels, right? So
Yeah, he
those
was
days
on
were
that
interesting.
setup at that pre-course as well. It
Yeah,
made so much
yeah.
sense, didn't it?
Yeah, and it was cool that in those days, because there was a lot of just experimentation, like what could make this more comfortable, what could help someone learn better, and um, all of that stuff, and probably spilled over onto the teaching technique side as well, like the progressions and I know as time went on, you always had a big role in that in your volunteer days on the tech committee, where we were always tweaking and modifying things that could help make that beginner experience better, and that
Yeah.
still goes on today, right? Like that's an
Yeah.
ongoing process within Cassie. So yeah,
I think
yeah,
it was really the things that were working together were what the technique certainly didn't drive the design of the equipment. But if you had somebody like Sean Catenow, for instance, a guy who was an instructor who had influence over design, and they were putting it out for us to try, then we started to see things with snowboards, like beveled edges or what rounded contact points, nose and tail, like easier straps, multi-adjustable straps that you could make. You wouldn't have to take a nut and a nylock nut off every time to adjust it, like the quick adjustments. Like all those things they're common in every piece of rental equipment now, rental snowboard equipment, but at the time they were like earth-shattering. The idea that you could adjust toe and heelward stuff, you could adjust angles with a lever, that you weren't going to catch an edge with the rounded contact points, like all of that made what we were talking about, I think, technically easier. Yeah, so that was really cool at that time, I think, to feel like, and you probably remember this as well, that you had maybe a little influence on more than just technique, that we were in a way, they were interested in our feedback when it came to actual equipment that would be used on beginner
yeah,
slopes around the world.
yeah,
That was cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean the other thing that stands out to me in those days was and you had some exposure to this through your times going to events like the Interski event, but the notion of how to teach snowboarding was pretty new as well, and so you were able to go to what did you say, Switzerland, Norway, and Austria for 3 different Interskis, and the differences in snowboard teaching back in those days was pretty stark.
Oh, well, if you think back, the first one was 99 in Norway, and the last one that I went to was 2011, I think, in Austria. So the
Austria.
changes that happened in technique and equipment, and was insane. Like so many changes happened from that first year in 99 to 2011 and certainly beyond. Like you've been to many more than I have, but the coolest thing I think about the early ones, especially 99, was that there was nothing was standard. Like what a snowboard turn like wasn't standard. How you how you initiated a turn, how you finished a turn, how you stood on a snowboard was still everywhere, from like wide stance, narrow stance, steep angles, mellow angles, like positive. It was brutal. Like mix into that okay equipment, and then I think a lot of the snowboard instructional organizations were maybe influenced by their ski overlords or parents or brothers and sisters, whatever. So depending on the relationship with that national body, which was typically based on skiing, how snowboard instruction was interpreted, presented, was all over the place. Like nothing was the same. Yeah, and that was the best year, I think, because the first interski that snowboarding went to was only one before that, and Greg Daniels and I think not Peter Chartier, but Daniel Lefebvre, I think, represented Canada in that first one in
In
95
Japan. Yeah.
in Japan. And then this is only the next one 4 years later, and it was all over the place. And I think your first one was when?
South Korea in 2007, but I can
Okay.
remember, we were together at 2011 in St. Anton, in Austria, and even there, because it was in Europe, it was so much easier for more people to get to. And I can remember one guy running a snowboard session who had driven there in his old beat up car and cracked open the trunk and had a bunch of manuals that he had written that he had gotten printed at the local Kinko's
Yeah,
or whatever, and he was handing stuff out of the trunk of his car on his how to teach snowboarding session. I don't remember the country he was from or that
I
he was
remember
representing, but
that.
it was so cool. Yeah.
So cool. And some countries would have maybe two representative organizations at least the first one and maybe later ones as well. So I thought that
Yeah.
was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we've seen with respect to Interski is that the systems have become a lot more homogenous. Like we're all kind of talking about we're aiming for similar pictures. We're talking about it in slightly different ways, but
Yeah.
we're sort of looking for similar stuff now, and that's probably also due to the equipment becoming a lot more standardized and not going through so many drastic swings in changes so much. Yeah.
Yeah, but I kind of miss the drastic swings of changes, like all the weird sticks and rods and things that you were hanging off people and holding on to. Like, I don't know. I thought that was the best thing because it seemed like anything was possible. And I think you
Yeah.
probably, for me, I remember snowboarding was like, anything is possible with this. Like,
Yeah.
you felt like
Yeah.
you were like you could only move up from there. So if somebody showed up with at the time, I think rugs came wrapped around long bamboo sticks. If some person from a country somewhere showed up with one of those rods with two great big pieces of foam taped on the end and said, "This is how we're going to teach how to snowboarding," you're like, "That's cool. Maybe
Sweet.
maybe we'll
Yeah,
try
let's do
that."
it.
As it
Yeah,
turns out,
totally.
carrying around an 8-foot bamboo pole with two foam knobs on the end wasn't the way forward, but it had its day. Yeah.
Yeah, the magic stick, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. But you're right. Now it's kind of not boring. Yeah, it's boring. It all looks the same.
It kind of looks the same
So
now.
it is, you know what I mean? Like we're really refined, and refinement is a wonderful place to be, I think, as an organization and around technique. But I think there's something to be said for all the like kind of messy, just all over the place ideas that sort of, anything is possible feeling. I kind of miss that a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. We look kind of the same. And I think it's because of the physics and the biomechanics of snowboarding. And then obviously the equipment is that much
Yeah.
better as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and just our own understanding of techniques and what works and what doesn't work. But you're right. It would be good to, I mean, this is my own personal opinion on the equipment side too. It would be good to see some of that kind of like what could be possible sort of influence again as well, to just sort of see what could be updated and changed. So
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing step-ons and step-ins. We're seeing, maybe 2 or 3, I guess 3 systems kind of being the big ones right now. It's fair to say between Burton,
yeah,
the Phase, and Supermatic,
phase.
they seem to be the
Yeah.
big 3. So maybe there's going to be a single winner. But I mean, from a binding, I guess, innovations or technologically bindings are finding some way forward, a little more
Yeah.
interesting. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's because
Yeah.
we're lazier or because it's better or what, but I've been on step-ons now for probably, as long as there's been Burton step-ons, this sort of generation, I've been using them, and I can't imagine using anything else. So that's bindings, and I guess to some degree boots. Boards themselves they're becoming almost more and more homogenized with some exception. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. While we're talking about equipment, one of the things that we like to do on this podcast here is drop in a couple little kind of like mini questions. But while we're talking about equipment, have you ever ridden a board that was not a Burton snowboard?
Have. Yeah. So the first snowboard that I rode was a Look Lamar, right? And I remember, I forget the name of the company. Steve would remember it. You might. There was a Canadian snowboard company. And it wasn't Cyclone, but they had maybe a model that was Cyclone. It was an Alberta company.
Yeah, I had one.
I can't remember the name of that company.
Was it
Was it?
Powder Stick or something? Or
No, not Powder
no.
Stick, but I'll ask Steve. Maybe, is there
Yeah.
comments in this? Post in the comments
maybe
if
somebody
you
can
know what I'm talking about.
let us know.
Yeah, but it was like drill mount, and they were they looked pretty cool, but the whole drill mount thing, thank God that went away. Yeah.
I think I can hear Rob Stevens yelling at his computer right now, yelling the name of that company.
He's probably, because it was an Alberta company. But I think it wasn't the model, I think, was Cyclone. Anyway, I had one season of that, maybe 3 or 4 of Nitro, which were amazing boards up until around 94, and then Burton since 94. So it's been a while on Burton for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, it is
and
pretty cool.
You've had we talked about the Riglet and your influence there, and you've had some cool opportunities come your way as well through that Burton connection. And I remember you talking about heading down to the U.S. Open to teach teach
Yeah.
down there, and stuff that
Yeah, I got to
stuff
go
that comes your
down a
way. Right?
couple or three US Opens back when they were in Vermont. And so, yeah, you would go down and there would be a lot of snowboard. The rest were American snowboard instructors. In fact, that's where I met Lane Clegg, who became, you would have known him. He was the American, the AASI coach, snowboard cross coach as
National team
well.
coach.
Yeah. Anyway, he was the guy that sort of got me working for them as a selector, but I met him down in Vermont as well. And so you'd be teaching with usually American instructors. Jake Burton would always kind of make an appearance and teach some lessons over there as well. Then you just go to all those events, and you'd be at the bottom of the pipe at the US Open. Like, that's incredible,
cool.
right? And you come away with swag. We never got paid, but we got to eat for free and we got stuff. And stuff's way better than money. But he knows that.
Yeah. Totally.
I remember a quick story about Burton. A friend of mine was applying for the Burton rep job. He said, hey, because I was working in Martock. He said, hey, do you think I'm applying for the Burton rep job? This was before they had a rep. So this would be sometime around 94 or 95. Do you think you'd be a reference for me? And if you do, I'll give you like a free snowboard. Right? It's this guy, friend, Jason O'Reilly, who, anyway, I said, yeah, of course. I'll definitely do that for a free snowboard. And so I went home and told my wife, Deb, we were just married, I think. Then I said, hey, Jason's going to apply. There's looking for a rep for Burton Snowboards. Jason Riley's applying. I'm going to give him a reference and he's going to get me a free snowboard. And I was thinking maybe like a t-shirt, and because they had other stuff too. And she said, you are a moron. Like, why would you not apply for the Burton rep job?
Right.
Like, why? And that's pretty much sums up my career in snow sports right there. Is I'm mostly doing it for the t-shirts. Right? So, yeah.
Well,
yeah. So, but
Rob and I talk about this all the time. Like there's something about snowboarders and swag, and I'm the same. Like I just love the swag.
Pay me in
on
swag.
That note,
yeah.
On that note, we got to continue with these palate cleansers, and well, this is becoming a bit of a stock question, and probably because Jeff and I talk about this all the time. I always want to know, what's your favorite piece of Cassie swag of all time? All the t-shirts, all the hats, whatever.
Brimless
the one that
baseball
I
cap?
Yeah, the brimless baseball cap, hands down. It was just a product of it, the moment. Like its moment was maybe a month and a half where it was cool. Unfortunately, the month and a half was the summer before it was introduced into the Cassie swag pool. It had already had its moment by then. I just remember wearing that thinking, okay, this is cool, right? But I knew it, part of me knew it wasn't. I guess a bald man hats figure very prominently in both function and, just it's my hairstyle. Right.
Well,
so
the thing about those hats is you could wear them with goggles. This is pre-helmet days.
Yeah, as long as it was warm. But you had that great big, you still had the opening in the back of the head that gave you the weird burn or tan. But honestly, I think my favorite thing right now is that runner's hat. I got one this summer from Jeff. Jeff, I think it was yours. And I love that thing. Like
bright colored
the
one.
pink,
Is it
the
like
pink and turquoise.
Yeah.
I love that hat.
Turquoise, yeah. It's good.
Yeah. So I wore it a lot this summer. So that is my current favorite piece of Cassie swag. Yeah, I love that.
Good choice. Nice. That's my go-to running hat.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. And like I said, it makes me feel young. And that's important right now at my age. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here we got another one for you here. Little known fact about snowboarding in the Maritimes. What do you got?
Little known fact about snowboarding in the Maritimes. I would think the influence that maybe not that it's had on snowboarding, but I think that in such a stupid, like I always say, Martock is like the stupidest place for a ski resort. Like it's half an hour to the Atlantic Ocean in one direction, and then it's like 20 minutes to the Minas Basin in the other. And you hear about lake effect on snow in Ontario, like the effect that the lake has. Well, the ocean doesn't have that same effect on producing snow. So it just sucks. It's dumb. It's humid. And the fact that in this stupid region full of humid air and, a really hard to predict climate, that we have, operational, functional resorts. And the fact that I just sat down last week at Wentworth, another resort nearby. I was there doing a clinic, and I sat with a whole bar full of people at like 7 o'clock in the morning, cheering on the athlete that had grown up at that resort, Liam Moffat, at the Olympics, a snowboard cross athlete.
Yeah.
So I think the best is, with 3 Olympians, Trevor Andrews, Sarah Conrad, Alex Duckworth, 3 Olympic snowboarders, all from here. Mark Fawcett, like a snowboarding god from New Brunswick. So just Rob Picard, right? So just people that have made their way, had an effect, or made a living in this industry that started here. Kevin, right?
Kevin Eaton. Yeah.
So Kevin Eaton from Lake Louise started here as well. So I like that about it. So I like that and I do like that you can become a snow sport professional here, right? That's possible that you can do it from anywhere, right? I like that about snow sports in general.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty cool what has come out of that region of Canada, but more specifically out of Martock in general. And I mean, the Cassie side of your life has been, there's so many things that we've touched on already, and there's so many things that we haven't touched on. Your time as the tech chair, your time on the board, you were the president of the association at one point. You and I were involved with teaching the first courses in China that have turned into a huge thing. And just to sort of be like aware of your time as well. But when it comes to Martock specifically, it's always been one of those spots that I've always been impressed with. Snowboarding has always been alive and well there, and I'm curious about your thoughts on kind of snowboarding in general, the state of snowboarding in general, as far as what you see in their backyard and maybe the trends around teaching and learning.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. So we have a new owner here at Martock. So, the same ownership now as Ski Cape Smoky, an amazing resort in Cape Breton where you're actually skiing to the ocean or snowboarding to the ocean at the bottom, like incredible. So new ownership. So Martin, my new 31-year-old boss, who is just slightly older than my oldest child. Yeah. So that's really interesting, having like a boss who's 30 years younger than you. Anyway, Martin, a great guy. So from the Czech Republic, an amazing ski athlete. So when he competed like at a very high level of ski racing. And I remember his first run here at Martock this winter. We're going up the chair and he said, there are a lot of snowboarders here. Like, aren't there? And not the way, like, this is a lot of snowboarders. Like sort of if you're, I don't know, walking through a forest and you realize there's a lot of like wolves here, aren't there? That kind of a tone. Do you know what I mean? So I really love that. And they seem to be jumping everywhere. So you're right about us getting that terrain park open early. I love that. I love that about a small place like this. And so I don't know if it's self-sustaining or not. I don't know what it is, but I think certainly it has to do with the people that have come before. Maybe it has something to do with the size of the place, right? I'm not sure, but I do. It's pretty amazing. Like I was riding under the chair yesterday, and there's a guy with like a ponytail halfway down his back and a ham radio in his pocket with literally an antenna that's this long, right? That it's that long, and like just ripping on hard boots down the hill. And then you have, like we see this, you have a young son now as well. Pants have gotten big again. And so all the kids that are ripping down the hill, like it's just having that community. And even though it's a small group of people, when you really think about it, but you see every kind of snowboarding represented in a day. You see a terrain park full of kids that's got the highest density of any of the trails on the hill in a busy day. So just having that, I would have said maybe a couple of years ago, it felt like maybe we're slipping a little bit. But looking at things this year and just seeing the caliber of riding all the way around, whether it's GS riders on hard boots or snowboard cross athletes or kids riding park or just people doing our little castle and corkscrew with a tunnel, like I feel like it's super healthy right now. And I have no idea why. I don't know why. I guess it's because snowboarding doesn't suck. I mean, it's fun. It shouldn't. I wonder if we should really be trying to justify it. Like, it's just fun, right?
Yeah.
So that
Are
should be
those,
enough.
do you think that it's a product of sort of like intentional decisions that you make kind of operationally or behind the scenes as far as what you promote and
Yeah,
what
I
you put out
think
there?
maybe at the beginning it was for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that
Yeah.
we were kind of maybe because of the position that I held here and Steve held within the provincial association, maybe we were putting snowboarding a bit more in front. And I was snow school director for a little while as well. So yeah, we just sort of always put it at the very least on an equal footing. Like we always say skiing and snowboarding.
Mhm.
I'm sure we all remember a time where we didn't say that. Right.
Mhm.
And then some people just tried to say riding. We'll just call it riding between the two.
Yeah.
So, and so
Not
we
quite the
just
same.
always
Yeah.
say skiing and snowboarding, like that skiing and snowboarding, no matter what. Yeah, I don't know why, but I think you're right. Maybe we were driving programming. We were doing things with with the rental shop, with the beginner area to maybe support snowboarding at the beginning more than others were. But
Yeah,
it
I mean,
does feel healthy
we
now.
hear it, we hear it a lot, kind of anecdotally about, and you see it riding around different pockets of the country where there's much fewer snowboarders. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I've always noticed is that I visit a lot of resorts, obviously, and when you look at just the kind of the promotional materials that are out there,
Yeah.
it's hard to say our snowboarding participation is down or is really low when 100% of your promo is featuring skiing. Right. And
Yeah.
so it just seems like a pretty simple business decision. But I get that there's behind the scenes, things that go into those decisions. So it's just been interesting to watch it at Martock, how it's always been front and center. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. I'll see an ad from a big resort still, and they're showing like the same old. If it's steep, there's a person doing an amazing ski turn. I don't know if
Hmm.
it's a stem Christie or what it's called, but it looks cool. And
Yeah.
that seems
Yeah.
to be that's what you're seeing a lot of that, and it should be at the very least. We try to make it equal at the
Yeah.
very least.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
showing if we show a skier tomorrow, we'll show a snowboarder the next day, or if the marketing material has both or one then the other. Just so maybe that has a little bit of something to do with it. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
We need a little Andy Mac at all the resorts across the country. I think
Just reminding. Yeah.
yeah, having somebody like you're an inspirational dude, and having somebody who's so like committed and has been committed to snowboarding since day one. Just, I mean, it's about the people that kind of make things happen, right? So if we lose sight of that kind of historical perspective in certain regions, then it's going to wane a little bit. And we've all been in the industry long enough to have seen those ups and downs. I would say that snowboarding is pretty strong in the places that I've visited in the past few years, which is pretty cool to see.
Well, and if participation in CASI programs is any indicator, I mean, we've never been certifying more people. So
Wow.
that's a cool sign too. So.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen just coming to the resort the last few years, like people from really diverse backgrounds, like so many communities that are like new Canadians that come from so many places all over the world. And that one thing that's maybe connecting them, even here, like I said, at a hill in Nova Scotia, we're seeing them all come together, those communities come together and become part of that larger community. And it just feels like snowboarding is really attracting many, many of those people as well, which is great. And I don't know why. And it may obviously the number of courses that are being done in China speaks to how strong it is in other places as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've definitely seen it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's hard
Nice.
to say why, but it does feel good here. It does feel strong here, and that's nice. And that whole like the whole snow sports thing, the whole ing thing, like if you like oh yeah, the whole my theory on ing. So it's if
Do tell.
it's got ing at the end of it, chances are you're going to do it. You can do it with your family, with your kids for the rest of your life. You can do it competitively, but you can also do it because it feels good and it's fun. Like people don't go basketballing as a family, do they?
I was
We
just
don't
thinking
go,
hockeying isn't really
yeah,
a
let's
word.
go
Yeah. Yeah.
hockeying
Yeah.
for the day, kids. We'll pile in the car and go hockeying. Or volleyballing. I feel like today we're going to go spend March break and a gym volleyballing together. So, right. So the whole ing, but you can go
Yeah.
snowboarding, skiing,
Skiing.
running, biking, golfing. That's maybe the exception to the rule. That makes no sense. But all the
We're
other
gonna get hate
ings are pretty
comments
good.
now.
Yeah. Here
Pickleballing's
comes
a thing.
pickleballing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but golfing, sorry. Yeah, golfing.
Maybe not
I'm sure
pickleballing, but pickling. You could do some pickling.
you can pickle together. Well, that's a Atlantic Canadian or maritime tradition towards the fall as you're preserving
Nice,
things. Yeah, so
nice,
yeah.
cool. Well, thanks a lot, Andy. Thanks for your time and for all the years you've put into the association, and we definitely wouldn't be where we are without you over the years. So thanks for all that.
Well, you know what? For me, like Cassie's and so many opportunities. Like I owe Cassie more than Cassie owes me, for sure. Honestly,
Yeah,
like
I'm the
amazing
same.
opportunities. And there's a lot of really great people now around here that are young and dynamic, and they're still moving forward with programming and businesses all around snowboarding. So I think we're in good shape moving forward as well.
Yeah, it's cool to see it evolve and develop. So right on. Thank you. Anything else
Thanks.
to add?
No,
That's it.
just
All right.
just get out there and have a good time. Wear your sunscreen.
Yeah. Right
Okay.
on. Thanks.
Good.
Thanks,
Did.
Rob.
Bye.
Thanks so much, Andy.
See ya.